Monster Mad Lib Choose Your Own Adventure flippy book thingy.
Choose your own adventure!
A Re-Mixable spooky story. This is October Guild collaboration. We invited our patrons on Patreon and our friends, and we sent them this invitation. They could print the PDF or just use an app, and then draw a story in the template,
And then put them all together.
in a book. So the idea is that we put together all of these individual stories, but they all have the same flow so that we can chop them into 4 pieces and then mix and match. For example, Teddy was waving at Minnie Mouse on the field, and C-3PO wouldn't stop talking. Truth. The first thing that I did when I was making up the template was to use my stapler and measure how wide the throat is of the stapler so that I could staple these together into a book at the end. This is Sam making her blob. You called him Jeremy. Jeremy with a J. What made you want to draw a blob?
Because my brain made up a spooky Halloween thing, and there's a blue blob. He was originally just blue blob thing, but then I decided to name him Jeremy.
Ty, what you drawn?
I'm drawing me going trick-or-treating, but I didn't draw my actual Halloween costume. I just did the vampire.
I like how you draw your hair now that you have the haircut. You were drawing this during the meeting.
And I couldn't figure out what the twist should be, so I was like, what if something, not a person, opened the door? A skeleton or a zombie, and I just stuck with zombie.
Here's our friend Aiden's. He's drawing a dragon who sees a ghost. Greg and Ellie, they were both wearing a blue tank top, and they were both moving at the same way for a little bit. Both of them leaned on their hands, and both of them looked up at the same time. It was super spooky.
A goblin cast a spell in a basement and summoned clowns.
The cat monster skied on a snowy mountain and found my cat.
Count Dracula went trick-or-treating in the cemetery and fell in a grave.
Final touches on Blob Jeremy.
Blob Jeremy threw goop in a haunted house when he realized there was a baby blob. Hey, it's our friends in Australia.
Yep. A fire monster setting a building on fire in New York, and a lizard monster is cutting a building in half. Scary Plant was roller skating at the disco when it caught fire.
And now I'm coloring mine. Tyler was trick-or-treating in the neighborhood when a zombie opened the door.
There once was a dragon that flew very high over a graveyard and saw a ghost.
I like the face.
The ghost dragon. You know, poor dragon. Snakenstein set a pizza store on fire in the city when the city was abducted by aliens. This is my first one that I did during the guild meeting. So I've got some ghosts and a jack-o'-lantern and a raven, and I'm doing the sky with swirlies so that it leaves little stars. A creepy jack-o'-lantern was chatting with ghosts in a graveyard when a raven pooped on his head.
A scary monster threw his rattle on accident. It got lost in his room, and he found it.
I like how it's a scary monster and then there's hearts around
Just
it.
adorable, right? This is your 3-year-old cousin.
A mean monster flew to school and ate a pencil.
Detention monster.
A terrifying toad spit his venomous snot at a tiny pond, and a mermaid batted it back.
Maniac fish jumped into a lava canyon and met a chihuahua.
This is your 5-year-old cousin.
Rainbow Witch was casting a spell on a broom, teaching math to her students.
It's a good twist.
I came up with the character named Mr. Leaf because I thought it was funny that there's
A leaf with a mustache.
Yeah.
It is funny.
And it was called Mr. Leaf. The leaves in autumn or fall. So I thought of him falling. And then I thought that leaves fall into a pile.
And
And
what do you do when there's a pile of leaves?
you jump in it. Mr. Leaf was falling in it first when a kid jumped in.
This one is mine. I'm sort of taking it from where Grandma Pokey's left off. She had Count Dracula trick-or-treating, and then he fell in a grave. And I was thinking, well, what happened afterwards? So Count Dracula goes home. He's got a headache. It's been a rough night. He wanted to go trick-or-treating and had to climb out of a grave instead. So he gets out of the grave, and he decides to take a nap. And he's just about to relax when trick-or-treaters come to his door and wake him up. So the idea for this came from a book that I had when I was a kid. My brother and I used to play with it all the time. It was Star Wars themed, and it was the same thing where there was a character doing a thing in a place and then something happened. So you could put C-3PO on Dagobah with Darth Vader attacking him, or you could mix and match and come up with some goofy things, and we always loved it. So I thought, how fun would it be to make our own? Yeah. I think that it would work better if it was done with a spiral binding, which you can do at Staples or wherever you would get things printed. They'll do spiral bindings for you, and it's not super expensive, but then you can cut all the way through and everything will lay flat. The one that we had when we were kids was a spiral binding, and it worked really well, but I wanted to make sure that this was something that we could make at home, so thus the stapler. So I was using a brush that was semi-translucent so that I could get the shading as I was coloring. But it meant that you could see the background through where I had done that horizon line that's in the template to make the shading. So I had to erase behind them on the background layer. Count Dracula was trying to take a nap in the crypt when trick-or-treaters woke him up.
And then here's my second one with Medusa.
I like how you split the first 2 frames with her face.
I couldn't figure out how to do the character, and she's doing the thing.
Yeah, there were several different styles of dealing with what I had given as the template. My intention was like the Star Wars one that I had as a kid, where it's all one scene. But a lot of people did individual scenes for individual panels, which was totally fine too. But you did such a good job getting all one scene in there.
Medusa was feeding her snakes in the park when a badger jumped on her head.
Rough. Badger, 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 badger. Snake, oh, snake.
I think the badger looks cute.
It is a cute badger. Medusa's cute too, though. Here I am assembling it. So I printed them all. So I stapled it and then I folded everything over and then I trimmed off the top part. There was extra on the top and I left the second half of every page fully together because I was cutting them all the way to the staple so that they'd flip. And so I needed them to have something that was going to hold them together. So if there was a spiral binding there, then the spiral binding would hold it together. But since I'm stapling it for ease, I left the top part so that it was intact on the other side. And then the top part, I just taped it together. So it's sort of made a cover. Mean Monster went trick-or-treating into a lava canyon when trick-or-treaters woke him up.
Bob Jeremy threw his rattle on accident in a basement and ate a pencil.
Tyler spit his venomous snot over a graveyard and met a chihuahua.
Congratulations on meeting a chihuahua. What a fun day. So now I'm making the cover. So I just folded it in half and then I made a binding with a pencil. I smashed it around a pencil and folded it in half. And then I glued the top part onto the top one. I should have had an extra page. I don't know why I didn't. And I ended up gluing Aiden's to the back cover, which meant that his was the one that was getting wrinkly whenever it was opening and closing. I should have had a back page. So lesson learned, if you do this, do a back page.
A goblin was trick-or-treating at a tiny pond when he realized it was a baby blob.
Mr. Leaf skied on a broom when a raven pooped on his head.
A scary monster was trying to take a nap on the snowy mountain and summoned clowns.
I hate it when that happens.
Oh no, I accidentally summoned clowns. The cat monster flew very high into a lava canyon when a kid jumped in.
To the lava?
Ah!
Silly Sam. A fire monster was feeding her snakes at a disco when the city was abducted by aliens. Count Dracula threw his rattle on accident to school and a mermaid batted it back. Snakenstein was roller skating in the park and saw a ghost.
A creepy jack-o'-lantern was falling in the crypt when a badger jumped on her head.
Huge thanks to our patrons on Patreon and our friends for always coming through with the amazing creativity and drawings and making these projects so much better than they ever could be without them.